Nest 2 as a location doesn't make sense to me, and it's another thing the originals got absolutely right. Welcome back to the world of survival horror. Now, I want to start this video off by putting out a caveat. The remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 get a lot of heat, and I just want to put it on record that I actually think they're really good games. I probably say this every time, but I really do enjoy the remakes as Resident Evil games, just not so much as remakes. This is because it comes down to the fact that they've cut content, or they've changed places or the locations, and in this case, they took out the Dead Factory. In the original Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, the Dead Factory served as the disposal facility for Umbrella. Once testing had been done at Birkin's lab for the T-virus, the test subjects, or guinea pigs, as were mentioned in this file, were taken to the disposal facility, known as the Dead Factory. This was masquerading as a disused warehouse. Any urban explorers wanting to check the place out just bought themselves a one-way ticket to hell. The Dead Factory would also have played a role in the downfall of Raccoon City, but I'll come to that in just a moment. Switching over to Nest 2, that's taken its place, it serves as three functions: to develop and manufacture a cure for the virus, to mass-produce the Tyrant, and to test the effectiveness of the T-virus bioweapons. It's unclear if this facility is connected to Nest 1, but you'd assume so. This would make the entire underground of Raccoon City pretty much a giant secret underground lab.
What is this?
You would have thought something that size would have been, one, to be able to support an entire city and subway system on top of it, and two, not noticed by people building the subway. Okay, granted, they probably were Umbrella contractors. But still, something that scale wouldn't have been able to keep secret for very long. Narratively, Nest 2 doesn't make much sense though. Although possibly connected, it is separate from Nest 1, which I'll be calling Birkin's lab from now on. In the original lab, the ability to make a cure for the G-virus is on hand, and this makes perfect sense. Should the scientists be working on the virus and be exposed, or they need to administer the cure really quickly, then they can do. It's right there. Claire was able to synthesize a vaccine for Sherry. However, Nest 2 being completely separate section appears to be cut off. There doesn't appear to be a way to get to Nest 1, unless it's just not obviously seen. So that would mean anybody working in Birkin's lab wouldn't be able to get quick access to the vaccine and stop an outbreak. It's also stated that it's used as a testing area for the bioweapons, but again it doesn't quite make sense. Although bioweapon development started around 1988, the T-virus was only perfected a month or two before the outbreak in Raccoon City. We know this because Birkin transfers to the city lab and the day of the mansion incident.
The biological weapon utilizing the T-virus has almost been completed. Our only remaining task is to acquire combat data.
You can't be serious. I refuse to abandon my work. I have finished the research on the T-virus, but I need a little more time to complete the more powerful G-virus.
Do as you wish. I will follow my initial plan and lure the STARS members into the mansion. Their superior combat training should make them perfect test subjects.
The mansion is secluded in the Arklay Mountains, and it housed all of the bioweapons that they were working on: the Neptune, the Cerberus, the Hunter, the Tyrant. The training facility, which wasn't too far away, also had a training ground for the Hunters. So why would Umbrella ship these bioweapons to the heart of the city? It just doesn't make any sense. And don't forget, Umbrella are not just some mustache-stroking megalomaniacs. Yes, although Spencer was looking for a way to cheat death.
I was to become a god.
Umbrella essentially is a business. They plan to sell these bioweapons to governments around the world. And so why would they risk transporting the bioweapons away from the secluded Arklay Mountains right into the heart of the city? The Tyrant 102 was only deemed a success in May 1998. Clones of this model, though, were transferred to Sheena Island for mass production. It's clear that developers have no intention of remaking Survivor, and thus incorporated the mass production element into Nest 2. But again, it just doesn't make sense. With shipping mass production offshore, it lowers the risks of being discovered, lowers the risks of causing global pandemic, and is easy to defend against corporate takeover. Placing the mass production into Nest 2 not only opens up the possibility of being discovered and infiltrated quicker, but if Nest 2 is indeed connected to Birkin's lab, then they've got access to that research too. The Dead Factory made way more sense because you got to see more of their initial operation. Questions like, what happens to the failed experiments? How do they dispose of the waste material? And how do they get new test subjects for the virus? I doubt they would just put out an advert in Raccoon City Gazette. Test subjects wanted, money paid, Umbrella Corporation will not be held responsible for any loss of hearing or sight or life. It also had a role to play in the downfall of Raccoon City. Even if the virus hadn't released when it had, the city only had a few months left to go. The Dead Factory couldn't keep up with the amount of waste they had to process, and some had been shipped off to the water treatment plant. With the water treatment plant ultimately destroyed, Raccoon City was left without a functioning adequate water supply. The Dead Factory also just helped expand Raccoon City, not just keeping it contained to a small section as in Remake. Although the environmental storytelling also tells the story of the US Special Forces squad that was annihilated at the plant. They were sent in with the intention of seizing the newly developed G-virus and bringing Birkin into custody. But without accurate information on the correct facility, they were far from their destination. They'd entered via the subway route. On the other hand, Umbrella already had this information, and so after dropping one tyrant at the police station, which we see in Resident Evil 2, they ordered to drop the rest of them at the disposal plant at the Dead Factory. As a result, the tyrants and the special forces fought fiercely, wiping each other out, the remains which can actually be seen in-game. In addition, the rail cannon brought in by the US Army squad for the use against the G creatures was not able to respond to the tyrant's surprise attack and remained unused, giving it a valid reason why it's there in the first place. For Nest 2, it's clear it was just used to cut corners. Far easier to reuse assets from Birkin's lab than recreate an entire new area. It's just a shame that they didn't put as much thought into the things that the game doesn't tell you directly, but can be seen if you look properly and help flesh out the story like the originals did. Technically speaking, Nest 2 doesn't actually replace the Dead Factory, and they can both exist in the same canon. The question really remains is, where did Jill go after she left the hospital? But according to Capcom, everything is canon. And to be honest, you probably shouldn't care about canon. But if you want to know why, then you need to watch the video that's on screen now. Thanks for watching, don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you survivors next time.